Hey, I'm Dusti Martin with Corcoran Platinum Living, and I doubled my GCI by getting rid of Zillow leads.
Listings, sales, and bigger commissions. Welcome to the Rookie Mega Agent Show. If you're looking to grow your business and increase your production, you're in the right place. I'm Spencer McDuffie, head of Rookie Mega Agents. Let's get to work.
What's going on, everybody? Spencer McDuffie here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Rookie Mega Agent podcast. Today, I have an absolutely fantastic guest on the show with an absolutely fascinating story, obviously doubling her GCI by getting rid of Zillow, which is absolutely amazing. And we're going to get down into the brass tacks to figure out exactly how Dusti did this. If you're new to the show, be sure to comment, be sure to like, and be sure to subscribe, and let's get into the show, guys. So Dusti, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I am good. Thank you very much for being a guest on the show today. I know the audience is really looking forward to learning exactly what they can do to double their GCI while also eliminating a massive expense like Zillow leads. I think it's going to be a great story for the audience here. So before we get into the nuts and the bolts and the brass tacks of how exactly you did all this, give us just a little bit more information about yourself and how you got into real estate.
Okay, well, I'm from Arizona. I'm a native, born and raised here in the North Valley. And growing up, my mom owned a ton of rental properties in our neighborhood. Her goal was to buy them, maintain them, have rental income as a kid, and then eventually have homes to give us. And I realized very early on that I didn't want to be a landlord because they would trash things. We had one renter horse ate the side off a house, and before you know it, it just ended up being more trouble than it was worth. And so that ended up not being something. But throughout life, my mom always had a really great broker. And when I would say, well, how come this, or how are you going to do that? He would say, hide and see. And so I did. And my dad was a contractor growing up, and I worked my way through college, and I was about 1 year out from graduating when we had the real estate bubble in 2008, when we had the banking crisis and the bubble like all at once.
Right.
And I went from having spent 2.5 years learning several different languages and becoming an almost expert in Russian negotiating tactics and strategic intelligence to having no job. So I graduated 2009, and as I was looking at my job opportunities kind of dry up, and the sales job that I had dried up because I was selling high-end fine jewelry. And when those went away and there was nothing, my mom's 401k had become a 101k. And we just kind of looked at each other and said, well, we know how to swing a hammer. And my minor was actually in agriculture because I had originally started out thinking I wanted to be an ag teacher. And about halfway through college, I went, nope, this isn't for me.
Right.
And so, so we kind of switched gears and just went back to the fact that things were plummeting. We bought our first flip in 2009. And she bought and held that, and we flipped that together. And I moved into it before it was even done. And so a lot of times I would spend my nights and weekends painting and, fixing everything. And at that time you could buy a house for less than you could build it. So that's what we did. And then after a few years, I finally did get a job offer to go teach. After a couple of years, my contract was canceled because education cuts and spending and stuff here in Arizona were hit hardest because one of our biggest industries here is real estate. And so when builders quit hiring people to sell more houses, it was like a domino effect, right?
Right.
So, here I am, middle of the year, my contract gets canceled. And my husband says, and, in the meantime, he and I had met, gotten married, I found our house and it was a great deal. Even my broker at the time was like, how did you find this? I'm like, I got ways,
Right.
And so my husband said, you're pretty good at that. Why don't you just get licensed and sell real estate? And I was like, you're right. Why not? And I figured, I can make my own hours. There's one thing I do not like doing, and that is punching someone else's time clock. So if I tell me to get up at 7 a.m., it's not hard. If someone else tells me to get up at 7 a.m., it is. And so I just found that I like being my own boss and being the master of my own schedule. And that's kind of how I got started.
Awesome. Awesome. So it really sounds like, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you never maybe had any real plan of ever becoming a real estate agent. It was one of those things that just because the economy was collapsing at that time, you already had a little bit of experience in real estate through flipping and renting properties, that you said, hey, maybe I'll be okay at this. And then you got in at that point after kind of just being kind of out of necessity at that point because you lost your job.
Yeah, I thought I would be an Intel analyst, like working for the government.
Right. Awesome. I think a lot of people, I mean, even me, I mean, I started the exact same way. So I think a lot of people end up, I mean, it's funny you said you were an ag minor. I'm also an ag minor, and kind of was expecting to go do something that ended up being a real estate agent, which I, I had no idea that was really where I was heading. But so I always like to start in the beginning because, this is a show that's mostly geared towards, rookie mega agents, people who haven't been in business for long, or maybe even be brand new to the business. And I want to give them a clear perspective on what that first year is actually going to be like when they actually get into licensing. So you've been licensed now for 7 years, correct?
Yeah, coming up on 7 here in like a week or two.
Right. So it's been a little while, but if you can remember, how many units or how much production did you do in your first year in real estate?
So my first year, I did about 7 transactions. I put a house under contract literally about an hour after I hung my license at my brokerage.
Wow, look at you.
Caveat, it was my husband's first house, and we had already bought this one and we needed to get rid of it. So it was, but we were motivated. I had already put the marketing and stuff out there, and technically we could do that because in Arizona you can represent yourself as a for sale by owner. That's perfectly legal here. And so we did that, but my first year I did about $1 million. And like I said, the market was in a very different place when I got licensed. So 7 deals today is not going to be the same as 7 deals yesterday.
Right.
And so I want to say, let's see here, I was making about 40,000 teaching, and I made about the same. My first year, I know I did at least 1 flip, maybe 2 in that first year. And of course I made a lot more money than I would have commission wise on those flips. And so mostly, like, I hate to say this, but I probably worked less than 5% of the hours I worked teaching, and I made the same money.
Wow. Okay. So if you would have put 100% into real estate from day one, I mean, who knows, you might have, 20 extra your teaching salary. But so you said you think you made about 40K, and is that gross commissions, or is that including your flips?
That would have been net. Yeah.
Okay. So net after brokerage.
At the time, I didn't have a concept of gross commission income.
That's okay.
Track that back then. I just tracked what I had to pay taxes on.
Right. So let's pause. Rookie mega agents, there's a gross commission and there's a net commission. So be sure to know what that is. Your gross looks very different from your net. I learned that lesson as well. So, okay. So in your first year, you did about 7 transactions. You did about $1 million in volume, and then net, you made about 40K, which is what you had to pay your taxes on. Does that 40K include the couple flips that you did in that time too, or is that?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So the commission on them would have been almost nothing.
Right.
At the time, I was doing a lot of short sales and REOs for some friends, and those were a lot of times the commission offered on those was almost nothing.
Right. And that's something that I definitely want to get your perspective on, because I think most of my audience is probably, a lot of them may not even be familiar with how different the market is now versus what it was then. So can you give us some insight in what was happening with the global economy? What was happening with real estate prices in your market during the time that you got licensed, if you can?
How much time you got? My husband is actually our former state treasurer in Arizona, and we met because we're both nerds, and I was running for political office, and so was he. And we bonded over our state budget plans, believe it or not. And so, so Arizona, I think most people know, was one of the hardest hit in the housing crisis, right? And it trickled down and affected everything. And so for several years, and so this is the way my husband would explain this to groups, is a lot of recessions are kind of a V, a bounce, or they do this, right? the housing crisis created what he called the Nike swoosh, you know, the instant drop, plummet down, and then the long trail out. And so his prediction back in 2009, 2010, and this was also my prediction, was it's going to be 10, 15 years before we really cover. And here we are 10 years out. It's going to be a long, slow recovery. And we are just now, like today, I talked to some clients or potential clients, and they're just now getting out from being underwater from houses they bought in like 2005 or 6 before things went upside down. And so, and back then we had kind of fake demand. We had people with questionable incomes who were buying their 4th house. And today, like, we can't put up actual homes like fast enough because all the millennials are coming of age and the baby boomers aren't going to the old folks home. They're staying in their home. They're not selling. And then everybody in between that did buy a house in the last 10 years got a screaming deal. They're sitting on a ton of equity, but there's nothing left for them to buy. So they're also sitting there. And meanwhile, the millennials have been kicked out of mom and dad's basement. They have a couple of crumb snatchers of their own now, and they have nowhere to go. So we've had this huge run up in our pricing. Like in some of our zip codes here, there's been probably a 20% increase in price per square foot over this time last year. And so that's like the last couple of years has been insane. And lots of people are pouring into Arizona from all over because our taxes are much lower and our cost of living and our jobs and stuff like that. And we're more open where a lot of the country's really locked down. So it's very different. Like I cut my teeth on REOs, short sales, and buying homes at auction that probably should have just been burnt to the ground and started over.
Right. So the reason I asked that question was actually to highlight that, you know, for our audience, for the rookie mega agents that are listening, is that, right, so, you know, today we have a guest on the show who made it through a major economic collapse, right? Or they call it a recession, the Great Recession, depression, whatever you want to call it. You know, a lot of us, including myself, are young enough into this business that we haven't necessarily seen or experienced how the business can drastically change when the market totally tanks. I mean, you basically kind of lived through the movie Big Short, is what it kind of sounds like to me. Yeah. So I want to make sure that the audience is hearing that and hearing that when you joined real estate, it was a scary time, not only in real estate, but in almost the entire global economy. And that's when you made the brilliant decision to start your real estate business, right?
Yeah, put it this way. I remember walking into one property and there were holes the size of vehicles in the walls.
Wow. Well, so now that we've kind of set the framework, I want to fast forward to today. I mean, in your first year in the business, you did about 7 transactions and you were focusing on short sales and REOs at that time, right? And flipping homes. Now that, you know, the economy's turned around and you're in one of the best real estate markets in the entire country, you know, what was your 2020 production like just this past year?
So 2020, 2019, I did about 1.98 million in volume. And again, I was like beating myself up and my average price point had gone down about 100,000. I was like, what's going on? And so about mid 2019 is when I hired a coach, and 2020 is when I kind of got my crap together. And I went from 1.98 to 4.37 and change million in volume with 10 deals. I totally changed my target audience. And let's see here. And so my GCI was about 127,000.
Right. So you basically have seen about give or take about 4 times increase in your business now that you've gotten into a better market, and then you've obviously started to implement some different strategies to intentionally grow those price points, because the number of deals hasn't changed a whole lot, you know, compared to back in the day, but you did double your GCI, right?
Yeah, I totally went another direction, and part of that was like getting rid of Zillow.
Yeah. So let's hop right into that. And I'm sure getting rid of short sales and REOs too. I mean, you're making a couple $100 to, you know, do what you do. I mean, that hurts. So let's dig into that then, because this show, what I like to do for the audience members who are watching this show is I like to give super tactical and super actionable tips and advice. You know, when someone watch the show, my goal is to, you know, for them to finish watching the show and immediately get out and be able to take some action. So that's kind of the way I like to preface this whole conversation. So, what exactly, were those light bulb moments? What happened that allowed you to specifically, in this case, increase your average price point and make more money while essentially doing the same amount of work, which I think is a goal that a lot of people can resonate with.
Right. So I want to say late 2018 or late 2017, I should say, is when I first started saying, okay, you need to set real goals, right? This has been fun, just kind of half-assing it, pardon the expression, for the last couple years. But if I'm going to do anything, if my retirement's going to be the way I want it to be, I need to be a little more serious. So the first thing I started doing was setting real legitimate goals and writing them down. That was the first shift. And then I spent a year researching. I watched anything and everything I could find on YouTube on targeting new clients, generating Facebook ads, doing Google ads, calling expireds, calling for sale by owners. I wasn't quite there yet. I hadn't quite drank in that Kool-Aid, but I want to say 2018 is where I first started kind of opening my eyes, figuring out, okay, what do I need to do to hit this GCI, right? And so 2019, after, as I came to the end of 2018 and looking into 2019, I had downloaded every free script that Tom Ferry or anybody else in the industry had. I think I was probably watching you on YouTube going, I can do that. Why can't I put myself through college doing high pressure sales where if you didn't make a sale, you didn't have a job.
Right.
And so I was like, what am I doing? Not to mention, then I would go look at these old expireds and realize how bad the marketing and the photos. And I was just like, man, here's somebody's $1 million home and they took cell phone photos and didn't even turn the lights on.
Right.
Somebody's biggest life investment and they couldn't even be bothered to turn the lights on. And so that's when I really started dialing in. And so then mid 2019 is when I finally drank the Kool-Aid, hired a coach, because I knew that if whatever they were offering that was free, how much more was there that I wasn't getting because I wasn't paying for it. Right. And so that's where the shift happened. And I realized very quickly that, as much as I love my broker, as much as he was very supportive, I didn't have the technology support that I needed. I didn't have a good CRM. I had to buy one myself. And I didn't have the coaching and guiding in terms of the scripts and what to do with your CRM and the messaging. He was very good in teaching me how to represent our clients the best way once you got them under contract, but there was no coaching on how to get new clients, how to do this, there was no how to until you actually had a contract to hand over and say, okay, let's do this, boss. And so that's when I kind of had the light switch is I figured out what I needed and I knew how much it was going to cost me on my own. And I was struggling with how am I going to get enough transactions to pay for this stuff, right? And we were out on Mother's Day 2019 for dinner, and right next to the restaurant in our neighborhood was this brokerage I'd never heard of before. At the time, they were an independent brokerage. It was Platinum Living Realty. And my husband peeked in the office and said, they look like they got their stuff together. You should check them out. And so I did, and I kind of cyber stalked the broker and their marketing and what they offer agents. And I found they were actually very broker centric, or not broker centric, but agent centric in terms of making you successful, keeping you happy, that kind of thing. And so once I transitioned over there, and I found, and this is another thing, is one of the mistakes I made early on was I don't need that. I don't want to do that much. And then I don't need a big brokerage with all these fancy bells and whistles. Mm-hmm. Yes, you do, because if you try to buy it yourself, it's going to be cost prohibitive.
Yes.
So for my $99 brokerage monthly fee, I was able to get BombBomb, a killer CRM, a website that was highly productive, access to Cole Realty resource. There were all these things that I wanted that I could not afford on my own. That they were here, so BombBomb, for example, I think at the time was $400 or $500 a month. Mm-hmm. And I could get that for $99 a month if I just switched brokerages.
Right. So just to reiterate and to clarify for the audience, you made a change in your broker because you saw an opportunity for better support and better technology and
Right.
more efficiency. But at the same time, you also hired a coach, right?
Yeah, I did a lot in 2009, like all at once. And
All at once you got serious.
Yes,
All at once.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I went to my first Tom Ferry event in like March before I was a coaching client, because it was a marketing event. I was trying to figure out how to run my own ads, how to like do all of this stuff, get people retargeted. And I actually dragged my old broker to it, and he spent more time looking up who the speakers were than listening to how to do it.
Right.
And that was kind of like when the lights went on, like, okay, I'm just going to rearrange chairs on the Titanic if I stay.
Right.
So
I guess, so talk to us just a little bit, and then we're going to get into like, you know, all the experience that you have and the mistakes that you made and the advice that you can give. But I'm just curious, you know, with changing the broker, what message would you say to a rookie mega agent who wants to get going, who's relying only on their broker to make them successful in this business?
So picking the right broker is the important part. It's not about the split, it's what you get for the split. So for example, my first brokerage was 80-20. Most people on its face would say, hey, that's pretty good. Actually, a lot of teams are 50-50, yada, yada, yada. But I also didn't get anything in return. There was no real office, no real bullpen. The technology was straight out of 1995. There was no training until, like I said, once you got to the contract, and then they'd walk you through and make sure like everything was done right and negotiate it this way, don't do it that way, ask for this, don't ask for that. So there was like no training. So I would look for a brokerage that not only fits your personality, and for me, I'm very independent. I don't like to be told what to do. So I originally went with the brokerage that gave me that independence, but I was a little too much on my own.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think I would go somewhere with little or no fees. So like $99 a month is like nothing in comparison to some other brokerages. And so what I would look for is make sure that they have a full technology package, but that they can also coach you, give you scripts, and teach you how to fish. Like, you know, the old saying, like, give me a fish, eat for a day, teach me to fish, eat for a lifetime.
Absolutely.
Find somebody who can teach you how to fish.
I could not agree more. And I'm so glad that you even used that analogy, because I love that analogy. And it's funny that you say your broker could help you walk through the contract. It's almost like exactly the way, you know, it's almost like a lot of these brokerages mirror real estate school, in that they teach you how to do a deal when you have a client, but they don't teach you how to get a client. But what you found, I assume, and what I've also found as a Tom Ferry coaching member myself, is that when you got coaching, you found that whole other side of the equation that real estate school or maybe your broker wasn't able to provide for you, right?
Right. And then like I already knew some of the things I should be doing, but getting the coaching helped me figure out the why and the how and make some tweaks to make sure it was actually more effective. So like I was doing certain things. I was doing videos on my listings, but not in the most effective way. So I was still better than most, but I wasn't like rock star status, blow the listing agents or the seller's socks off when I meet with them. I was like, yeah, I'll do a video.
Right.
But when almost no one's doing a video, that's not saying much.
Right. It sets you apart. I mean, we talked about this on the podcast, and I tell a lot of my coaching clients, you know, this same thing. Just the other day, I'm doing a pre-qualification email with Bomb Video. Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Spencer. How you doing? You know, check me out below. And I'm putting all these links. I put links to probably 8 different listing videos that I had recently done on other homes that have sold. And I'm like, hey, I'll give you the whole marketing, you know, package whenever we meet in person, but look at these 7 videos and tell me if you still think I'm your average agent, right? I'll see you Friday at 6.
Right. Yeah.
So, and so it definitely builds some credibility. And so that's what I really want to get into for this call, is the nuts and the bolts, the stuff that you learned in coaching. All the rookie mega agents should hopefully be learning how to write contracts. And that's not the stuff that we cover, because that stuff is available in, you know, wherever you go. Any broker, any YouTube channel can explain to you this stuff, but how do we fish? So let's start there. Whenever you got into coaching in 2019, you know, what were some of the things that you implemented that allowed you to, you know, get rid of Zillow so that obviously you could fish on your own, and then also raise your average price point and double your GCI? I mean, that's a feat in and of itself.
So I think my first action, I want to say, is I immediately set up with Coach Tom Ferry's guidelines, by the way, I took very copious notes on something he had said about how to decide where your geographic farm should be. So I checked the area that I wanted my farm to be in and made sure it fit, and it did. So we were good. The next thing.
So tell us a little bit about that before we get off the farm. You say, how to choose a farm. So I'm assuming you're referencing probably some things that the audience doesn't know, like turnover in the area and the number of homes. Can you tell us a little bit more about how a rookie agent should go about choosing their farm?
Right. So pre-COVID era, you don't necessarily want to choose the farm or the geographic area that you live in. Me, having over the few years of being licensed and, newlywed to now I'm a mom of twins, I got to the point where I was sick of driving an hour each way for every transaction. Like I was not about it. That was 2 hours away from my kids. And so I decided I want to work 3 to 5 minutes, 15 minutes max from my house.
Right.
And so I looked at my neighborhood and it met what it should have. At least a 6% turnover with no dominant agent. So I think now my farm has like a 10 or 11% turnover, and there's still no dominant agent. It's mostly like onesies, twosies. I think the most anybody's had is like 4, and that's not even like 6% of the whole deals. So,
right.
And that I'm still working on and still targeting, still growing. So I started direct mail. My game plan is to be the absolute expert in my neighborhood in terms of all of the data. Like you want to know what a house exactly should sell for and what the list to sale price ratio is for the neighborhood and what the high and what the low is. And, like I have 20 years of data that I've gone through and compiled, and then I use that to do big, huge quarterly reports. Now this is expensive, but I also do monthly, like market update postcards, and you can find those, get those cheap anywhere, or you can just put your face, find a good call to action, get a book on direct mail and that kind of thing. But you want to make sure there's no dominant agent, walkable if possible, especially if you're young and healthy and your neighborhood is homes that you can walk door to door. Mine is not. People like my neighborhood's rural residential, and people have full-on compounds. I'm the clamp that's in my neighborhood. So I have a tractor out front, and my nearest neighbor is 5 acres away.
Yeah, that's something that's always been interesting to me. Like when I pull up to a country home, that's like, they're like, 100 yards off the street or whatever. I'm like, I'm not walking up there, man. They're going to shoot me.
And that's another reason I don't walk in my neighborhood, because I know the political leanings in my neighborhood. And I know that if you go up and walk, unless you have a UPS box in your hand, there's a good chance you will get shot. So I ain't doing it.
Right. So that's hilarious.
And
so
these are like $1 million homes. Don't get me wrong. These are like big properties, but you got to know your audience. So go to RPR. Every NAR member has it. Go to RPR, pull the neighborhood reports, look through those, figure out who is the average buyer and seller in that neighborhood. So I know the average buyer moving into my neighborhood, into my zip code, is between 35 and 45. My average seller is between 72 and 92.
Wow. You really know the market.
Yes. Know thy shit.
I love that. Okay. So geographic farming, doing some direct mail, making sure that it's walkable, knowing what your turnover is, making sure there's no dominant agent, kind of checking the boxes to make sure that you really are choosing a good farm. And the reason that you're doing this is because obviously it costs money, right, to do geographic farm. Can you speak a little bit to the agents about that and marketing budgets and if this is the right thing for them to consider doing?
So there's a couple ways you can go about it. It's much harder on Facebook now because you have to do a 15-mile radius. And in a lot of places in America, that could be like 4 million people in 3 different cities.
Right.
So what I do is I run Google display ads to my neighborhood to kind of geofence them. I don't expect to get leads from them. I just want them to constantly see my face every time they're flipping through the interwebs. Right. Wow. Then I do a monthly postcard. My first year I dropped about $600, and then $600-700 a month. It'll depend on the size of your farm. My farm now has over 1,500 homes. And so I drop a jumbo postcard. It's cheaper if you can pick a farm that has EDDM, every door direct mail, because that's cheaper. Mine does not, because the routes, like I said, they're rural, they go all over the place. So the data that I'm dropping may not apply. So I pay a little bit more. I pay about $1.50 per card when it's all said and done. Budget to do that for a year to 18 months before you ever get a single listing out of it.
Yeah, that's an important note, guys. That's one of the main reasons that I still have not ever implemented farming, because as she just said, 12 to 18 months before you really even start to see a return on that money, and you're spending, at this time, $600 to $700 a month, right?
Right. So I had that chunk of change, and so I figured this is where I want to live. This is my neighborhood. And so this is kind of where I've made my stand. And I'll kid you not, the first time I did my quarterly report with all my data and everything, I had one of the neighbors call me up and say, "This is amazing. I've never seen anybody do this." And I didn't get a listing out of it because it turned out it wasn't quite right for them where they were in life to sell, right? Because they're older. They didn't, what they want doesn't exist for the price that their home would sell for.
Right.
And so they were trying to decide, do we renovate our house and stay here, or do we find something or build something? And for them, the answer was to renovate. But that's the thing, is you need to make sure that you come to a place as you're helping a neighbor, especially if it's like the farm, that if you live there, make sure that you're not just trying to get a sale, because word will travel faster. And then I have a 1-800 number on my postcards, mostly because I know the average demographic is older. They're very likely to pick up the phone and call a 1-800 number and leave a message. You
don't have them scanning QR codes, because that
they won't work.
Right.
Half of them don't have email.
Right.
So that's kind of know the tactics, but at least, and then when I do my monthly market updates for the city, I do them for the major cities that I work. So I do one for Scottsdale, one for Cave Creek and Carefree, and then one for Phoenix. Then what I do is I take and I run YouTube ads, because I know they're on YouTube, even if they can't click on anything. So I do that. That's part of the geofencing. So they're still seeing me. They're like, "Hey, that's the girl on the postcard or on the market report," or whatever. And then I also started we call it Mad Mom Mondays. And it's basically a once a month happy hour for moms who need a drink at the local steakhouse. And actually, a year after I started that, one of the ladies who only came a few times was like, "I need a realtor and I need one now."
Yeah.
So,
and there you were.
Yeah. So, and that ended up being a 450, I want to say 450 range cash deal. 15 days from the day she called me to the day we closed.
Wow. Yeah. So that's awesome. There's some great tips and strategies in there, particularly the Google display ads and the geofencing that you referenced. That's actually nothing that I've ever heard about. I understand the limitations to Facebook ads because of the wide geographic area that they're now making us do. I didn't really know about this workaround, so I'm going to look more into that, and I would encourage other people to do the same. Okay. So at this point, you got your farming going, you're rocking it. You're even generating some business from this farm at this point. What else did you implement into your business in order to help, double your GCI?
So one of the main things I did was I actually started targeting for sale by owners and expireds and canceled listings. And my neighborhood, or my market, I should say, is really, really competitive. And we don't have very good data for our area. And the people who do spend a lot of money doing it, and they pay ISAs. And a lot of times, even if I start dialing at 8 a.m., by the time I get to them, they've already had 65 phone calls and they are pissed off.
Yeah.
So I tried to reverse engineer that. So what I did is I went and I took, from my data provider, whether you use Redx or Vulcan or MyPlus Leads or whatever, what I would do is I would pull all of that expired data, right? I would upload it into the back end of Facebook ads, and basically you create a custom audience or a client list,
Yep.
And you can use the name, the address, the email, phone. You really need name, email, phone. Those
Right.
are the three main things, city, state, whatever. Then I shot a video just on my phone with my whiteboard back here. This brown thing's my whiteboard. I wrote out my buyer needs, 4 or 5 different buyers, and said what they're looking for and where, right? And I was strategic about the expireds I pulled, right? Because I only want to work in a certain area. I'm sick of driving all over town.
Right.
So I only pulled expireds from that area. I got about maybe 1,000 old, and I went back years, right? Like 4 or 5 years expireds. Pulled those, made a custom audience, ran that. I have buyers in this market looking for these things right now. If your home matches one of these, call me. And I picked up almost $1 million listing on that, $52 worth of ad spend.
Oh my God.
Because a little old lady, she was scrolling. She doesn't have an email account. Like she has one, but she can't access it, right? 83 years old. She was scrolling on Facebook. The video came up and she goes, oh, yeah, my house does match that. And so she called me one night and said, do your buyers, do you still have those horse property buyers? And I was like, well, yeah. And it turned out it was nowhere near an area those specific buyers wanted, but that was a house I ended up selling 5 times because it was in and out of escrow. But I sold it, and it was because I was able to just place the ad in front of her. So she was able to pause it, and then she called me on her landline, right?
Right. Wow.
So,
that is amazing.
When I went back, I had called her twice and left a voicemail and never got a hold of her. Come to find out, she never answers the phone because it's telemarketers.
Right. So do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. Stand out from the crowd, be different. That is an amazing tactic and strategy. And honestly, I want to learn exactly how to do this. so give us at a high level. Most people are thinking FSBO's expired. I'm calling, I'm going to the door. I may even try to add them as a friend on Facebook and maybe DM them or something like that. Just quickly, I don't want to get, bogged down by this, but how exactly would you go about doing this? Or how did you already know how to run Facebook ads at a very high level, creating custom audiences and things like that?
I probably spent about 100 hours like binge watching YouTube ads trying to figure it out. And then prior to that, like I was starting to feel it out, but then I went to Tom Ferry's Marketing Edge, which is probably not coming back until the Rona thing is over. I think the last one they did was online. So if they do it online again, but Jason Pantana is the one who would normally do Marketing Edge. I just like binged anything he ever puts out.
Yeah.
And like, I almost Facebook stalk him because it's all very actionable. How to. Another one is Jaime Resendez in Texas.
Yep.
I think he's with EXP. He has an amazing YouTube channel that will teach you anything and everything you need to know. In fact, I even send my husband sells online wills and trusts and estate plans. I send videos to him from Jaime's saying, this is how you run the ad that you need. You just change the marketing, right?
Yeah, and that's amazing.
So I went to Marketing Edge. I went to Tom Ferry Summit, and it took me some tweaking out and tweaking out.
Yeah, don't tweak out too much.
It took some tweaks to kind of like work out the kinks and stuff. But I ran that ad. I started like maybe mid-December, and I got the phone call like very end of December, very beginning of January, somewhere in there. By middle of January, I had like a $975,000 listing.
Right. And is this something that you're still doing? Is this the way that you approach expireds and FSBOs as a whole? Are you still calling and doing the door knocking at all? Or are you just pretty much custom audience, reverse engineering, and you kind of get what you get while mostly focusing on your farm?
So the FSBOs, I don't do that, but I should. I've just now gotten like better data for my FSBOs where I can get their emails and stuff, so I can do that. And then I ran some similar ads to the same audience for like a few months, and I didn't get another bite. So I think it was kind of played out, but now it's been a year. So now I'm thinking maybe I should refresh those videos, run those ads again, and see what happens. So,
and I think that there's 10
sale by owners I call.
Yeah. Well, I think there's 10 million different ways. I mean, running the ad is the nuts and bolts of getting it in front of someone. But what you're saying when you show up in front of their door virtually via Facebook could be, 10 guaranteed ways to make sure your home expires. Something. We
have these massive listing kits now. I have a non-disclosure agreement at my brokerage, so I can't really show you what's in there.
Right.
But if you Google Jay Macklin, my broker.
You
He
might see
has a
some
video that's basically to recruit agents where he kind of shows you what's in that kit.
right.
And that is like,
That's amazing.
I know I don't lose listings with that thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, that's definitely a really cool approach, and I hope that the rookie mega agents can get it. I think the thing that I would like everybody to take away from this is that you spent the time and you learned how to do this, and a lot of this stuff is free and out there. Jason Pantana from Ferry puts out a ton of free content. Marketing Edge, I think they may even be doing it virtually. I'm not sure, but Jaime Resendez, along with the 10 million other content creators on YouTube who are covering how to make Facebook ads, guys, there really is no excuse. And if you've got the money to do it, you can hire somebody to help you with this stuff too, and at least get them to kind of coach you / do it for you while you kind of pick it up and everything. So that's a really cool approach. Now let's get back to the Zillow leads, because obviously, you know, you got into Zillow and you got wrapped up with Zillow somehow. You know, what kind of led you there? Why did you leave Zillow? You know, tell us about Zillow and how that worked for you.
So I think I started Zillow because I realized at the time in 2014, I could actually get some ad share for like $180, like almost nothing. And, you know, I did the math and I realized if I just make one sale from Zillow, I can have a premier agent, have my listings featured, i.e. my flips at the time. And I was like, well, okay, for that amount of ad spend. And then I found a mortgage broker who called me up and said, hey, do you want to split the cost? Because at the time you could do that. And so we created a good working partnership. And then eventually he kind of left. And then I decided I'm going to throw more money at it because I was getting good. I was starting to convert higher. And that's when they switched to Flex. And I was like, okay, well, I'm out. Have a nice day. But they switched to Flex in my marketplace, which basically meant after I paid brokerage fees and their referral, essentially, I was going to net less than 45% off of every deal. And that didn't even include like transaction coordination, like nothing. That was just like the brokerage split and their referral. And I started realizing I was just getting into like calling expireds and for sale by owners. For sale by owner information is free. It's free. And so I hadn't even paid to like have a dialer yet. I would just hand dial the for sale by owner. Can I come see the property and go from there? And I was like, they're going to make it, you could tell that they were picking their favorites, some big brokerages that they had partnered with. And so you could tell they were trying to weed out the single agents. So I just said, okay, this is how it's going to be. Good on you.
Right. Might have been one of the best things that ever happened to you. You know,
I think it was, to be honest. Like,
who knows if you'd be creating custom audiences and reverse engineering $1 million.
Yeah, once I figured that stuff, I was like, why do I have these guys around? I started creating content. This past year was the first time anybody ever found me on Google and just called me up. So, I mean, it works. It takes a long time, but I wish I had done it sooner. Like,
Yeah. And that's a perfect statement for where I want to take this conversation next, because you've been in the business now for 7 years. You've been here for a while. And, you know, I know that there's been some trials and tribulations. I know there's been some lessons, some regrets of things that, you know, maybe you wish you would have not done at all, or maybe, you know, implemented sooner, you know, so share with us, you know, looking back 7 years, you know, what were the things that right now where you look back and you were just like, you know, face palm, like, I can't believe I did this, you know, the big mistakes, the big lessons, you know, I want to hear from that.
Oh, what did I not do? I did not set up a CRM day one. In fact, I never had a CRM until I bought my own at the end of 2018. Should have done that day one. And so I was, 4 years in before I even considered having a CRM. And then let's see here, didn't have a coach. And like, it's so cliche. And a lot of people see coaching as I'm going to sit down, I'm going to talk, and they're going to talk to me about how I feel. And it's not like that. And it's like, you need somebody to sit you down and tell you what to say, how to say it, and what buttons to push on the internet to make things happen. Right. And so pick a brokerage that not only provides that. So like, even my broker, he's actually a coach with a different coaching program, and they have a whole different strategy. So like, not only do I have my Tom Ferry coach, but I've also got that coach, you know, because my broker is actively coaching all of us and helping us build.
Right.
So look into like a culture of everybody helping each other, because it's more than just desk fees. You know,
Right.
if they're taking like 20%, you're not getting anything for it, then that's not the place for you.
Right.
And that was like the big misnomer is, yeah, I had a good split, but then I didn't realize that for the same split, I could have gotten so much more.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, no, and I love how you phrased it earlier in the calls. It's not about what the split is, but it's about what you're getting for the split.
Right.
I think that's a great phrase, and for people to keep in mind, because so many people want the flat fee, the cheapest split, but it's like, dude, you're making $75K a year and you got a great split, but over here we're paying in 20% or whatever in we're paying in, but we're making $250,000 a year. So which one would you rather actually have? Are you really worried about?
And just in terms of buying the technology yourself, okay, so great. You're like me, you're a self-starter, you're very independent, you don't like to be told what to do. See what they're offering in terms of the technology and see if the desk fees even make sense. Because for me, it was like the technology alone was like, I could not pay that rate and get even one of those. Right. So keep that in mind, is look at their technology and like really like figure out, like, does it do all the things that you should do? Can you retarget? Can you run ads? Like my CRM, we have Sync and we have Chime through our brokerage. So I use the Chime platform, and Chime now runs my Facebook ads, my buyer and seller leads for me, because it got to the point it was just taking so much time that I just said, for the same price, they'll do it for me and I'll get the same amount of leads.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, because when I'm coaching a lot of my agents, it almost kind of blows my mind. I will tell them, the simplest, most tactical thing ever. It's like, hey, you're brand new. One thing you can immediately start doing is growing your sphere of influence. Have you gotten into any Facebook buy sell trade groups and garage sale groups and start adding friends of people who are active in those sites local to your area? And they're like, oh my God, that's the most magical thing I've ever heard. I'm like, dude, somebody, growing your sphere is very cliche. Find a broker who can give you actionable, tactical advice. Say, go do this in 20 minutes, do it for the next hour, and then come back to me and talk to me about how it went. Because if that's not the direction that you're actually getting from your brokers or from your coach, then you probably don't have the right person to serve.
That's
that
not
capacity.
A coach. That's just somebody who cuts a check.
Right.
Or receives a check.
Yeah, 100%. So, well, before we get going and get out of here, I think you provided a ton of great content, some stuff that I'm definitely going to look in myself. But tell us a little bit about, 2021. What's your plans for the year? What do you want to accomplish this year, and where do you kind of see yourself heading in the future as you mature into this business and continue to grow?
Well, last year I doubled my business, and I told Tom Ferry that I wanted to double again, and so I've set an even bigger goal. My goal for 2021 is to do 10 million in volume, gross commission to be somewhere between 350 and 379 GCI. And I'm shooting for somewhere between 20 and 36 transactions. I'm going to also try to double my price point again this year. Wow. So my price point in 2019 went from 225 to like 450, 550, depending on buyer or seller. And so this year I'm hoping that 450, 550 goes to like 850 to $1 million.
That is insane, guys. I think the cool thing for people to listen to when you say that is so many people, including myself, are always saying, I'm gonna do 100 deals. I'm gonna double my business. I'm gonna do 150 deals. I'm gonna just work. I'm never gonna take a day off. We gotta hustle, like Gary Vee says, but I love the way that you're approaching it. That, yes, I want to make a lot more money, but if I can do it while working the same amount of hours or less, why not take that route? And I think that's a really cool perspective that I think a lot of people overlook, and that it is possible with geo farming and with FSBOs and expireds to target a higher price point and still maintain control over your life.
Yeah, and to be honest, like with for sale by owners and expireds, I just set my dialer, like I sort out anything under a certain price point. I didn't even bother to click the button because I just knew I wanted to be closer to home. Closer to home has a much, much higher price point. So that's where I'm going. And I started creating content that was geared towards this area. And like I said, it took a while, but I've now had a YouTube and a Google call. So I've been doing YouTube for a couple of years now, and I just got my first, I thought I was doing it right, but I wasn't. And Jaime Resendez showed me my ways.
Yeah. So Jaime Resendez is at EXP, by the way, guys. He's actually in my group, and he is a phenomenal teacher, coach, and trainer with the tactical online stuff. You know, I'm not that good at the whole online thing, but he's quite good. A great person to watch. I recommend that too. Okay, great. So, you know, before we hop out of here, you know, I want people to be able to connect with you. I'm sure that your story is going to resonate with a lot of people who are going to want to reach out to you, maybe ask you a couple questions and pick your brain. And if you don't mind, you know, what would be the best way for people to get a hold of you? You know, maybe your Facebook and Instagram and things like that. How should people reach out to you?
My Instagram's probably the easiest way, but if I don't check it for a couple days, don't freak. It's at DustiMartinRealtor.com, DustiMartin Realtor, at Dusti Martin Realtor. I also have a YouTube channel. I don't have enough subscribers to have a custom link yet, but if you search my name, I will come right up. And then there's also Facebook as well. You can find me pretty much anywhere. You Google me, I will pop up.
Got it. Well, that's awesome. I really feel like it's been a fantastic show, and I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing your story. 7 years worth of growth and taking this journey, you know, starting from freaking the depression and doing REOs and short sales to getting wrapped into Zillow leads and learning how to fish and survive and thrive on your own now with, you know, sites to do, you know, dang near $500,000 in GCI this year. It's big, ambitious goals, and that's what I like to see. So congratulations on this past year. You know, I wish you the best of luck as you go into 2021, and I want to just invite you to share, you know, any final tips, tricks, strategies, or final thoughts with the audience before we get out of here.
Don't be arrogant. Get yourself a coach, get a CRM, and just like look at it from my perspective. If I had done these things year one, where would I be now? Like, yeah, I'm doing good, but I could be doing fantastic. So just look at it from that point. Like, do it day one and make sure you get off on the right foot. Don't think you know everything, or that, and don't be a glutton for punishment. I was like, well, I can learn to do that. Well, yeah, that's true.
Right.
It takes a long time.
And you can also just get some help so easily these days. You know, it's insane.
It's
I had a guy reach out to me the other day, and he, you know, he can't afford coaching, and I always try to help people no matter what. He said, you know, I'm reaching out to my sphere because I'm making calls and I'm brand new. And he said, you know, I want to call the for sale by owners and the expireds, but I can't afford the Red X. And I'm like, dude, do you know that you can go to Zillow, search for homes in your area, filter by for sale by owner, and start making calls? He was like,
and there's free coaches out there. Ricky Carruth is free.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not equal opportunity. I listen to all the coaches. I listen to Ricky. I listen to Brandon Mulrenan. I have Tom Ferry. Be an equal opportunity opportunist. Listen to it all, because not everything for Tom Ferry works for me, but not everything Brandon Mulrenan does that works for me. So I like the scripts, and I like Ricky's kind of jive and attitude, and then I like the tactical stuff over at Ferry. So
and I think Mike Ferry is you know, also got Mike Ferry is when you're talking about like foundational sales principles, like just straight up how do we do sales, Mike Ferry is a beast. But when you want to talk about like new school marketing, like Tom Ferry is definitely where it's at. So what I told one of my coaching clients the other day is, you know, as long as we remain humble and remain a student to our craft, anybody can teach us something. And we have to be open and receptive to bringing that knowledge if we really, really want to grow. So on that note, Dusti, again, thank you so much for being on the show. It was awesome to have you on. People, go check out Dusti Martin on Instagram at Dusti Martin Realtor. Check her out on YouTube. Check her out on Facebook. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to like my video. And don't forget to subscribe. Book a one-on-one coaching call with me if you would like. And be on the lookout for more videos. So, Dusti, thanks again, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
All right. Have a great day. Bye.
You too. Bye.